All right, so it is 1 o'clock, so we'll get started today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event on how to unlock the power of search for brands and executives. Why are we discussing this topic? Well, because the stats speak for themselves. At 8.5 billion daily Google searches, more than 99,000 every second, Google is the #1 source for news and information for fact finders everywhere. Searching for something is widely considered research, and therefore, search results that an individual finds are more trusted than traditional or social media that's been pushed to an audience. And let's not forget that search results are more than data and SEO. Carefully managed, search results can tell a powerful story, drive awareness, and promote a brand. But left unattended, search results are a missed opportunity at best, and at worst, they can severely damage a reputation and hurt a company's bottom line. What makes today's event so exciting is that we're bringing together expert storytellers, digital masterminds, and media pros to talk about how they've leveraged search to help their clients. My name is Jesse Jacobs. I am the CTO of Lightbox Search, and I'll be your host for today's event. Lightbox Search is a technology platform that empowers PR professionals and communications pros with search results intelligence and automated search solutions. I'll drop a link in the chat for you to learn more. If anyone would like to learn more about our platform, our team will stay on after to provide a live demo and schedule any follow-ups for those interested. But before we jump into our main event, I'd like to introduce our speakers for the Fireside Chat. Joining us is Larry Moskowitz, the CEO of Lightbox Search, Raoul Davis, the founder and CEO of Ascendant Group Branding, and Lewis Williams, the Executive Vice President and Head of Brand Impact at Weber Shandwick. And they're going to share with us their unique perspectives on how search has impacted this subject. All right, gentlemen, I'll leave it to you and you guys can take it away.
Well, I said at the outset I was going to steal a little and hopefully we'll give a little, but one line that Lewis said is that we all have, if you can see this thing, and Lewis said, why do we call them phones? Who's last made a call on one? So in an increasingly mobile world, we think nothing of Googling a company we just heard of, Googling a person we just heard of, Googling a campaign, a political campaign, Googling a problem, Googling a court decision, whatever it may be. There was plenty of that going on the last couple of days with governmental officials and with the election season, and of course, the impact that's having on corporate America and the corporate world. Droughts, fires, this is something biblical almost. So you could spend your life Googling. And I think I stole that notion that the last thing we do, the least amount of time we spend on these things is actually phone calls, yet we still call them phones. And the other is what's so important, what shows up on those, because with the limited kind of real estate here, but even in real estate we have on our laptops, I'm actually on a big desktop, a little more real estate, but most people, and most of the time, I'm doing my searching on a mobile device. So real estate's at a premium. And so to steal something from Raoul that he said during our pre-chat, you're either branded or you're labeled. And Google does that. So we were all stunned at Lightbox to read that the most trusted source of news in the world, according to Pew, is Google. We don't think of it that way. And as Jesse was saying, because when you're in charge of the search with your thumbs, mine are sausages, and I find things I'm not necessarily looking for, you think you're in charge, and therefore it's an authoritative source. And because Google aggregates so much, you are looking at a range of potential inputs. So with that, I'll kind of open up our discussion to the two men I shamefully plagiarized. So I don't know if Lewis wants to kick it off with the notion of how we rely on these things for so much more than phone calls, or Raoul, up to you about being branded or labeled.
Sure, I'll jump in. So yeah, and it's something I learned from a mentor of mine, Chris Collins, this whole concept of being branded or labeled. And it's really, those are your two choices. It's binary, right? And that shows up nowhere more pronounced than on Google. So Either there's a set of search results that help you put out the message you want in the world, or there is a chaotic bunch of results, right? And we just had this conversation yesterday with a prospect who is currently writing a relationship book, but is also a metaverse expert. And so we talked about how when you think about positioning your brand, you got to ask yourself, how do you structure the brand so that if you are meeting with a VC, you're getting the sort of search results you want? And at the same time, if you are looking to be a speaker on your relationship topic, there's some stuff there. There has to be like a real thought process and some architecture kind of planned out to make sure that your brand flows in terms of results. Because to your point, Google is all those things that you reference, right? And it's also just a way I kind of check someone out real quick, right? So you say you're XYZ or you're say at this level, well, that better show up in your Google results or we're going to have a little bit of a trust gap. Thank you.
All right. My take on it is my expertise is consumers and branding, and I'm just impressed with Google itself. I mean, when it started off as a search engine that no one even knew, I mean, right? It was just something, and now it's making so many products, and it's actually become such a strong brand and such a part of our lives. Once your name just becomes, it's like Xerox in the old days, just Xerox it, you know, just Google it. Once your name gets into the vernacular like that, you've said something and how people really accepted you. So I'm just amazing how they've just taken this idea of search and brought it, you know, there's an emotional side of it. There's a very useful side of it, you know, get me out of jam, tell me what to eat, where to eat, who to eat. And it's also how strong they use search just to connect us. Because, you know, I'm going on a camping trip for the very first time. Shh, I know that's bad, but I don't know what to do. So I didn't trust the companies, I trust the community. And it's a way of using search to bring the communities together and brands together and knowledge together. So I'm just really just impressed with Google as a product, as a brand, and all those things.
And I would like to just inject the way search has come along in the continuum of professional communicators, particularly in PR. I think we've been dealing with clipping services since literally the 1850s, going back into the UK in the 1820s. And then along came one of my former creations, which was a forerunner to PR Newswire. So, you know, electronic transmission at a whole 66 words a minute. How stunning. And then technology continued this motor along. So at this, the one thing that really did hit the PR industry, I think, squarely in the head and unexpectedly was social media. Mm-hmm. How quickly Facebook came on the scene and bam. So it was a tsunami. And I liken Google and search in general more to the ocean. So we've got the river of the news. We've got all of a sudden this tsunami comes along, and the PR industry wrestled quickly to try to manage what was going on first Facebook and then the other social platforms. Here we have a presidency run by Twitter. It's astounding. Public companies can make fair disclosure on Twitter, putting their earnings out on Twitter. This is astounding to me, coming from a traditional way. And Google is the ocean. It's just where everything winds up, whether it's social, whether it's news, whether it's listings, whether it's any kind of information, that is where it ultimately resides. And so to bring up kind of a nasty sounding analogy, kind of like putting the frog in the boiling water. It doesn't know it's boiling until it's boiling and dead. Mm-hmm. So unless you master Google in our minds, you've not mastered the ocean. You may be managing a river, you may be managing a stream, but you sure ain't managing the biggest bulk of water and what can affect you the most. Would you agree with that, Raoul?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think what happens a lot of times is customer expectations change without you kind of being aware of it. And if you adapt to it too late, it becomes a problem for you. So quick example I can think of is Grubhub, right? Grubhub instantly put every restaurant into the delivery business, whether they wanted to be or not. So the ones who adopted quickly found a new source of revenue. The ones who didn't faced extinction, and the ones who didn't know how to manage it properly faced decreased profit margins, right? So I think Google has done the same thing in terms of it's reshaped how people vet, how people experience brands, how people make their decisions. And so if you don't have a very intentional and planned strategy for it, then you're just letting it happen to you, right? As opposed to influencing it intentionally.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Mm-hmm.
So I think we're about 10 minutes into this. The one thing that we're here to talk about is that much of the world, and even in our community of communicators, think that you can't influence Google, but you can. There are ways to better manage it. It doesn't have to happen to you. There's also an unlimited, an infinite number of Googles. A search done in the north side of Chicago is different than a search done in downstate Illinois, which is different than a search done in Berlin, which is different than a search done in Hamburg. And your prior search history will affect what you see. So I think there's a lot about Google that people never raise the hood, like we don't know how to change the oil anymore or change spark plugs, which I grew up doing. And so everybody thinks underneath it's a magic machine, but it ain't. There is a way to understand it. There are statistical drivers behind it, and there are ways to analyze, manage, monitor, and improve or fend off, as we call any kind of assaults, by building a digital fortress. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jesse.
All right, awesome. I couldn't think of a better way to start off this conversation. Thank you so much, guys, for participating. I'd like to invite everyone else to turn on their cameras and join us. And as everyone's getting on, I do want to address a question we have from the audience already. Lucas, I think this is directed to you, Raoul. For the audience listening, please feel free to drop questions in the chat or the Q&A at any point. We'll do our best to answer them. I also invite anyone else to jump in, and answer this along with Raoul. But Lucas is asking essentially, what is the difference between being branded in search, versus being found? And Lucas would also like to hear the panel's take on what it on the means to achieve higher search rankings. Are rankings still driven primarily by the number of quality, inbound links, backlink building, and does social activity play a role? So
Sure.
Raoul, I'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're a CEO branding firm, right? And so obviously working with CEOs and executives, integrated service means that the whole Google part is very important. And you all know this from the inside out. The part I know of it is how big a role PR can play in it, right? And so sometimes some of the decisions you have to make specifically is, when you're approaching a specific media outlet, what is your ranking, and how, when you get placement there, will that influence results, and what is that story on? Is it going to shape the narrative that you want to? So this idea of being branded or labeled from a search perspective is, if you Google yourself right now, your own name, your company, are you seeing a set of results that best reflects who you are in the marketplace and conveys the quality of what you have to offer? If you do not, then it is your responsibility to give the marketplace a better sense of who you are. And it's not about gaming or manipulation, this and that. That's not the intent of it. It is to align your authentic value you're bringing to customers with your search results. And I think that's important to highlight, because this is not like a manipulation game. It's more like, who are you? Bring that authenticity out. Try to have it show up in your search results.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking a second to address that. And now that we've kind of handled that question, I do want to invite everyone else, all of our amazing panelists, to say hello, go around, the room and introduce themselves. So I'll start with just who's I'll just call on someone who's first on my screen. I am not playing favorites. Barry, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi. Hi. Hey, I'm Barry Reicheter. I lead our global intelligence team at Fin Partners. We are a research and analytics and analysis group that serves across all of our offices and different practice groups. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Brian.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Laird, SVP Digital Health here at Lippe Taylor Group, and help oversee both digital, social, search, and all the likes of that.
Great, great. Kyle?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle Monson. I lead an agency called Codeword. We do content, social media, PR, influencer campaigns, mostly for big tech companies, but a lot of startups as well.
Awesome. And Kyle wins the award for best background today. Jennifer, would you care to say hello?
Yes, hi. My name is Jennifer Levey, and I'm the Media Relations Director for Makovsky and Company, a public relations firm in New York City.
Great to have you. Bob?
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I'm Bob Pearson, Chair of the Next Practices Group and CEO of the Bliss Group, and glad to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you. And John, hello.
Yeah, hi everybody, John Patterson. I am one, I help lead the digital team, I should say, at Ketchum. We're a global PR agency, based on the Omnicom group.
Great, great. Well, now that we've had everyone introduce themselves, I'm going to kick off, the main event with, just kind of an introductory question that I invite everyone to chime in on. How crucial in general are search results and SERPs, search engine results pages, for brands and executives? From a general perspective, where do they fit in, to your communication strategy development, whenever you're brand building or planning out a campaign, something like that? Where are they for you guys? Let's see. Jennifer, any thoughts on that?
Well, basically, search results do factor in. We always, Google, and we always do search results with our tools. And we also tell our brands to also search themselves to see where they are in the landscape.
Yeah, awesome. Kyle?
Yeah, I can build on that a little bit. I think, we think about branding as all of the experiences anywhere in the world that your audience has with your brand. And that includes, digital results, real life results, in-store, everything. And search is such a big part of that. I think, partly because it sits where it sits in the funnel, it's kind of at the top. It's probably the first or second experience that the audience has with your brand. And so it plays a really big role. And the nice thing about that is, while you might not have total control over it, it's a combo of the news about your brand, your first party web pages and blogs and things like that, probably your Wikipedia entry, which you shouldn't sleep on. And audiences, they really trust what they find on the SERP. So SERP is a search engine result page. And it's maybe more trusted than any other channel because audiences know, that's where they can find an unbiased look at everything about your brand. So we really include it in the total brand landscape that your audiences are looking at and put a lot of importance on it.
I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. Brian?
Yeah, I was just to kind of go off exactly what Kyle and Jennifer were saying. It's when thinking about the user's digital journey for a product or service, search is quite often that first step in their discovery, and it's a tool that, we see that continues through the entire sales funnel, but in different ways, as a way to educate and encourage audiences and really bring them to take action towards that lower funnel purchase. So what we've seen in our research when we do audience personas and building campaigns is that search is that constant tool along the way that they're going to go up and down with in their journey, but plays very different roles at different stages. So, the importance of keeping our clients' results visible in all search engines that really speak to wherever the audience is at that stage in their journey is not only crucial for the brand service, but also really acts kind of as a partnership in a way in a role for those consumers. It brings them along their entire journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I see Lewis, you're nodding along here. Why should agencies and communicators, be managing search results? And, your background, what we talked about had a lot to do with, stories and storytelling. How can agencies and communicators best tell the stories of their clients, whether it be a brand or an executive, through search? You're muted.
I'm sorry. Raoul mentioned the word narrative, and it really is about the narrative, right? And your company has a narrative, and you as a CMO or whatever executive, you have a narrative. And you must tell that story. If not, somebody else will tell it for you. You know what I mean? So that's why it's important. So people can get to know you. And I think when someone said, it's like, we all know that it's number one, number two choice, and it's most trusted, right? So that's it. It's still about consumer relationship. Consumers relationship, and you building that relationship. It's the front door now, right? It is the concierge of your brand and of you. So it's best that somebody walks in your living room and they feel good about it. So it's all about relationships, right? So right, you can't build anything unless you have a wonderful relationship. So it's really key.
I love that you said that about the front door. We use that analogy all the time, which makes me want to ask, what are those elements? What does a good front door look like? What are the foundational elements of good search results, that you as experts believe your clients, must have? Does anyone want to jump in on this? We haven't heard from John.
Yeah, I can jump in. So I love, first of all, this is a great conversation. I love what everybody's been saying, and to kind of build on working across the funnel and how this is so holistic. The way that we think about one of the ways we think about search is kind of in two categories, right? It's intent and discovery, right? So, when we're thinking about organic search, we want to be highly discoverable, right? That's not the only goal, but for a product-focused organization, that's going to be one of our primary goals. When we're thinking about paid, we're going to be speaking to a customer in a much different capacity because they're going to be much closer to having an intention to do business with us. And so, one of the foundational things I always recommend to our clients when we're talking about holistic search strategy or 360 search is to really put the customer at the center of every one of their results, right? Search to us, is not so much about keywords anymore as it is about answering the question that your audience has in a really genuine and authentic way. Now, there's space for keywords, absolutely, in both organic and paid. But we've shifted much more to a question and answer type of model than we think about these massive, keyword lists and really trying to, maximize copy on pages and things like that. It's much more practical because Google's a lot smarter than it used to be.
Absolutely. I've noticed that in my own experience too. We shifted away from, a lot of just intense keyword research and focusing on those like long tail keywords and phrases. I know Kyle wanted to, I think, jump in on this topic a little bit. Did you?
Yeah, I feel like Lewis already nailed it. But to build on what John was saying a minute ago, I think that Google had an ad campaign a few years ago that I think the tagline was something like, maybe the best ads should just be answers. And I'm like, oh man, that's kind of it, right? Like you're providing value to the audience, you're giving them the information that you want. And yeah, I think in terms of how to set that up, especially because so many of us come from PR backgrounds or we're in the earned media space. Those are really powerful ways to control your SERP and kind of impact what's going to be on it. And I think that PR stakeholders, our clients, sometimes undervalue what that looks like in the results. You know what I mean? Like we hear from executives all the time. They're like, how many people saw this article today? And they're like, well, yeah, I mean, a bunch of people saw it, but you know what? It's also making your brand experience on your search page better for everybody forever. Like your employees are going to see it. Your new recruits are going to see this. Your investors are going to see this coverage on your search results page. Anyone that's going to Google with any kind of intention and putting your name into that box, this is going to make that experience better for them. So we keep that in mind as we're like, hyping the earned media that we're driving for our clients and making sure that they're seeing the holistic big picture around search and not just like this media coverage got this many thousands of views this week, because it's a bigger story than that, in my opinion.
Absolutely. That's a great point. It makes me want to ask Bob a question next. One of the things we talked about in our planning, session for this event was how search results and search engine results pages themselves get crafted, right? And so whenever someone runs a search, they get created in real time, on demand for that searcher, custom based on their location, past search history. But people aren't just typing in, keywords anymore. They're not just typing in questions. And as Bob brought up, people are searching by voice now. What kind of new trends are impacting search results, search behavior, and how can communicators, not only be prepared, for those changes, but how can they take advantage of them?
Yeah, no, Jesse, a great point or question. And when you look worldwide, about half of search now is audio. If you look in the US, it's about 40%. But our preference is overwhelmingly to do audio search. And you think of where technology is going, it's pretty obvious. So what that means is we use different words when we speak versus when we write. So that changes SEO, it changes SEM. It also gives us different insights into what people are thinking about. So that's one thing I think that is important. You know, another thing that I want to play off of what John and Kyle and Lewis and the team are getting into is, if you think of a Venn diagram, one of the things that we love to do with search is you look at your own campaign and you say, who are the influencers we're targeting? What channels are we targeting? What content do we think is important? What keywords do we think is important? Then we go over to this truth machine, Google, and we say, okay, who's showing up there? And when you put the two together, you go, oh my goodness, we're not targeting some of the right influencers or organizations or right topics, and we're not using all the right language. And that ability to put the two together, I think actually is a huge opportunity for communications as a profession, huge.
Can I build on that a little bit, Bob?
Please.
When you talked about voice, right? We got to think about too, the inclusiveness of that. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, everybody may not be able to type, right? You know what I mean? So just been thinking about exclusivity, you know what I mean? It's something that I don't know if Google was thinking about, I'm quite sure, but that's something that's really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's a fascinating point. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that? We do have a question from the audience I'd like to address, if there are any thoughts. Cool. So Arnold has asked, you know, during strategy discussions, do you advise your partners, you know, what platforms and audiences so I believe the question, I'm going to paraphrase slightly, is, you know, how do you advise your clients and partners which platforms and, you know, audiences to address when starting, you know, a marketing campaign, you know, such as within the sports market? I think is the question. Brian, I see you nodding.
Yeah, I mean, I can offer a little bit of input of how, you know, we approach it. You know, here is, it's all about data, and we're very data driven, data first, and it's pulling in conversation analysis and finding out exactly where what people are talking about, but where they're talking about it. Are they heavier, or say Google, or is it Bing or Yahoo or something of that nature, or really just in any digital channel? That's what leads our strategy. We don't just go in and say, Google, you're the top, where you're going to put all our budget there. No, we actually have, my Google is going off right now. We actually have a good strategy in place to say X amount of % of your budget on Google, X% amount on Bing, because that's where your audiences are. And I think that's the biggest key, is finding and uncovering that data and applying it very strategically to your campaigns and your recommendations.
That's awesome. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, one thing that I'll add there. So we definitely have a very similar data-driven approach. You know, we put the audience at the center of everything we do. One distinction that we make that we found has been pretty useful is, and again, it's kind of the separation between organic search and paid search. You know, we're definitely want to be very focused in everything we're doing in paid. On the audience we want to attract. We also want to pay a lot of attention to the audience that we're earning organically. And we want to pay a close attention to and compare and contrast how different those or similar those audiences are. Because what I've found is a lot of brands in their organic search, they're not speaking to who they thought they were. You know, they're building really smart personas, or their agencies are building really smart personas, very targeted at product, services, or, you know, establishing an executive. And then when you look at the traffic that they actually earn that's coming through organic, the people look very different. And we have to lean into that insight, you know, and really identify, you know, are we missing an opportunity? You know, are we speaking to the right audience? You know, or do we need to find a new insight that maybe, you know, delivers us a little bit different content to be able to capture some of that search?
Yeah, I'm also a big advocate of the first 30 days really kind of being bold enough to experiment with some content, because a lot of times the data sets are just based off what you already know, but sometimes it's worth taking some risk and discovering who your audience could be and what messaging they may accept, because that can then broaden the lens of data and allow you to kind of have a fuller picture in terms of what's possible long-term.
Yeah, Jennifer, I see you nodding your head along to that as well.
No, yes, I agree. I mean, I think that when you're searching, you should also have a lot of different ways to do that search with a lot of different vocabulary, because like people speak differently.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that came up a lot, I think, in our planning discussions. Brian and I, we talked a little bit about, for those who aren't aware, healthcare and pharma have, as an industry, it has been an incredible driver of technological innovation in the communication space.
Yeah, we do healthcare too.
Yeah. And I think a lot of agencies today might find themselves, at least those who dabble in search, working in pharma and healthcare, because I remember speaking to one of the communications director of a large health system, and they were telling me how Google is the first and last stop of their sales cycle. When someone has a condition, they're going to look that up, and then they're going to find a practice or a clinic and look up the doctor and eventually book on Google and get Google Maps directions to the appointment and so on. With that, did someone? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I was going to add something.
Please add in.
But just to jump in, I was thinking Lewis said on being inclusive. Just a little bit of time to think. The something that really is resonating certainly with me is I get involved in combating disinfo and extremism, and recently we've been looking at the Russia-Ukraine situation for a variety of reasons. And when you look at Yandex versus Google, Yandex, of course, the Russian search engine, is showing that everything's amazing and awesome. But if you look at Google, Google's actually suppressing some of the information that we should be getting because it hits their filters for what is too extreme. And so neither is really telling the story very well to the people receiving it in certain parts of the world. Well, you go fast forward into the United States and we get into audio search, and you get back to the comment that Lewis made, is that if someone is speaking perhaps with different words, or they just say something differently, they describe something differently, our ability to get that information, the right information to people, really requires that we're paying attention to that. And what we forget with algorithms is there are people behind the algorithms. And so we all have biases. And so how do we stay on top of that? So we make sure that we're actually doing the right thing. And there's many examples in the world where we're not doing the right thing. The trick is, how do we work together to get there?
Awesome. And I think that actually we have a question kind of based on that, which I think would be a good one to address now, is what are your views about other search engines such as DuckDuckGo and others that state they will protect consumers' info, more than Google? Any thoughts on other search engines and, how they compare or contrast to Google?
Well, I'm going to say probably the unpopular thing. I think that if you're dominating and doing really well on Google, you're probably fine, right? So like, I get, the other search engines and they are important, but at the end of the day, if you're really great at Google, you probably are going to do pretty well.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. So just a reminder, all for privacy, may also be a little bit unpopular, but there are some kind of pragmatic uses for the data that we share with search engines. And the search audience has come to expect a certain level of customization, a certain level of personalization, a certain level of predictability in the SERP. And a lot of that becomes much harder and much more costly for the search engine if you remove access to the, massive data set that Google has, or any other major platform, Facebook, for example, right? They're to some degree predicting what we want to see before we search it. As you're typing, that SERP is being built and rebuilt based off of many, many thousands of different factors that are a lot harder to track without a direct access to data through a logged in email or something else.
Yeah, and I think there's other trends too, where like DuckDuckGo, people may be using DuckDuckGo because they believe it's a little more secure, a little more private. There's more encryption involved. Well, okay, that's good if you're, certain parts of the world where it's more repressive, that's a favorite. But if you think about in the United States, when people are searching for sensitive topics, do they feel secure enough to search for them? That's a legitimate point to consider. So just a thought. I think search engines have different purposes, and knowing what they're being used for is so key.
Yeah. I was just going to add on to that.
Please.
We're always monitoring kind of penetration of different engines, and we might experiment on the spend side, but when it comes to, my team's kind of focus is really on researching human behavior around search, and you really just can't get any other sample as statistically significant as you can with Google right now. So there's just, they just own so much of the market that if you're going to do any, if you're going to start to dig underneath the search results page to figure out what's going on, you're going to go to Google first, and then it'll probably be fine in the other ones. But right now, I don't think that the other ones are a place where that's going to upset that at all.
Awesome. I'm glad you jumped in, Barry, because I wanted to ask, we have another audience question. I think from your research perspective, you might be well equipped to answer. From a 30,000 foot perspective, how is B2B different from B2C? In search, how do you look at them? Based on the audience types.
Yeah, we run a annual. It's out in the field right now. Annual B2B journeys report where we look at what type of media B2B buyers are using, purchase decision makers throughout the organization are using. And, there's still things that, face-to-face contact and interactions with salespeople is still kind of routinely at the top of the thing. But at certain points, you'll see search pop up at different points in the process. So usually at that sort of trying to understand what their problem is and what the solution may be before they even start looking out in the field, search is very high. Then as they sort of dive down into the deep, they'll go to company websites and solution provider websites. And then they'll return back to search when they start to think about, well, what's the reputation of this organization? But very different purposes, and almost bookending the B2B purchase journey by thinking about themselves. Are there other people like me that are having the same issue? And then I'm going to look at and start to vet out suppliers or vendors that I'm looking at to make those purchases.
Awesome. Thank you. Are there anybody want to jump in on that? Because I have a follow-up.
Well, we can ask. Just the one point, I think it's important for everyone here might see a different statistic, but it's probably by a percentage point. Google controls about 96% of the American search market. So DuckDuckGo is now taking out some network television advertising to build its brand a bit, but Bing and DuckDuckGo are pretty much also brands that don't count. So when you've got 96% market share, you're pretty dominant, which may get, of course, the government involved with antitrust issues. But so far, they have stayed, kind of like that ocean that just keeps rising, as opposed to something more like a tsunami.
Yeah, and that's a really great point. And so while we're on the subject of, kind of like B2B versus B2C, this one was directed at Bob, but again, anyone can feel free to chime in. Is our voice searches, voice activated searches mostly in the B2C space, or do you find that B2B searchers are also using voice activated search?
I don't know the exact answer, so I wouldn't say that. But what we do see is that habits are pretty consistent across B2B and B2C worldwide. So I think we just prefer the convenience of speaking into our phone, so that's one of the things I find fascinating is that change. The other change is what's going to happen into the future of search related to Alexa-like devices, right? Because really, if you think of Alexa, it puts on the music or tells us something, but it's sucking in all the information from our homes, and it is really creating an internal search engine within where we live, and that's kind of fascinating. So there's different concepts of search that are going to collide together over time.
Yeah, and that really brings up a great segue into kind of another question we've been asked is that, there are lots of different types of traditional search engines that we all kind of think of, Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing, but there are newer search engines built into the social media platforms that we regularly turn to. And so this next question is, how is TikTok changing how brands get discovered for Google search? And I think this is a great question because, for non-fact-finding type searches like restaurant suggestions, we're seeing the rise of Instagram and TikTok and things like that. So I'd be curious to hear from all of you, how these new social media platforms and internal search engines are, impacting brand discovery.
Well, I have two thoughts on it real quick. I think one, YouTube's a really important one because people are looking for video results, right? We're trying to experience your brand in a very specific way. So I think the search engine on YouTube is a very important one. In terms of TikTok, I think where we are I'm just going to speak to the CEO and executive side. I think we're at the point of who's going to go first there, right? There's not a lot of publicly traded CEOs on TikTok right now. There's not a lot of CEOs at larger companies, but TikTok is where Instagram was 6 or 7 years ago, right? So we can kind of inevitably see it growing, and it will do much more, and more businesses will be on there and more CEOs will be on there. But I think we're at kind of who will go first at this point with it.
At least for right now, though, it's not a super intention-rich platform. Like, you're not going there to search for information. It's much more passive entertainment. I've got 15 minutes to kill that turns into 90 minutes once you're in the algorithm.
Yeah, and Kyle, to build on what you're saying, I was actually going to say that TikTok's algorithms built very differently from Google. It is driven as a recommendation engine, right? And so, it's going to drive discovery, but it's also going to very quickly adapt to your preference. And so what it's going to do is it's going to narrow your visibility. And so in terms of, discovering more of what that person likes, definitely valuable. But in terms of the breadth of what it can answer and how much intent it can capture, it's not quite there yet. Now they are doing some tools. There's some things you can shop through TikTok. They're definitely thinking about search more. And I think that's smart because many other platforms waited way too long. For example, Facebook tried to get in the search game and they were just too late, right? I mean, they could not compete with Google. TikTok has has a potential because of its scale, but I think that they have a very different goal, right? Their goal is to keep you within TikTok so they can sell advertising, and that's not as directly geared at answering questions as you might see on Google.
It's probably more dopamine delivery device now than it is, intent search engine. Right.
Yeah. Do you think when they push to that direction, guys, you think will it change the personality of TikTok? Will they mess it up? You know what I mean?
They could. They definitely could.
Up, right? They move into a monetization strategy, and then it ruins what was magical about it in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen that happen with Google to some degree. Even the page used to be 100% organic search results, and now on a mobile phone, you're lucky to have 6, 7 actual results, and the rest of the page is cluttered with advertising. So I think
and
that's
TikTok
really
could still shift. I mean, we've seen that with Instagram, right? Instagram used to be more like TikTok. Now it's a really great travel search engine, and a lot of users use it for travel recommendations and location information and reviews and things like that.
And just to kind of springboard right off of that, what Kyle just said is when we approach in our strategy and in our campaigns going into TikTok and Instagram and all these places, the brands and the products that we're doing, we have a lot of beauty and skincare and aesthetics brands that in their digital user journey for those audiences, that is where they're finding the inspiration and the information. And then they turn back to search at some point in time. So when we build content on those channels, we keep in mind copy and keywords and phrases that we've learned in our data, again, to kind of pull through and think of it in a search perspective, as well as an entertaining perspective on those channels, but utilizing it in a way to educate our key audiences for the brands that we're on there for, and then pull them, again, keep pulling them through the sales funnel, where hopefully they will be going back to Google to kind of get to that lower funnel activity.
Awesome.
I also want to add that Pinterest is also another great social media area that, customers do look at too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's always one of like our big 5, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm forgetting something, I'm sure, which also have really big search value. Creating and claiming those channels, making sure you have those vanity URLs, the right links in the about description can be huge drivers of traffic and, positive SEO content, especially in those early stages of brand building, if someone hasn't done those yet. So what I'd love to at this point kind of transition just a little bit into, maybe some of the practical tips or advice, that anyone here can offer. I had also, if anyone has any great examples of, how they've managed to take advantage of search or help their clients with a search related issue or something like that. I'm going to call on Brian first, because I know he has a really cool perspective on, how you can take advantage of how we use, a searcher's vernacular, to drive greater awareness or traffic. So Brian, what do you think?
I mean, in the healthcare space, I can kind of transition into that.
We were starting to go there earlier.
So we were,
please,
because it does kind of tie back to what you're looking for here, and in being such a regulated environment overall in digital, you have to apply that same kind of those regulatory guidelines in search. So, in healthcare, we're all familiar with Dr. Google. We all probably use that term at some time or another, where audiences turn to search to really identify their symptoms or conditions and find answers, are in pharma marketing cases, treatment. So, we look at search for that particular vertical as another piece of the digital journey once again, but then targeting patients, searching maybe on specific conditions or symptoms first, and then kind of roll in with a regulated approach, the product keywords and the branded or the questions, where we continue to kind of pull through is, again, analyzing that audience target through data and that conversation analysis and pulling out the phrases. What are people concerned about? What are they searching for? What are they already talking about in forums? And you take those results and transform them into very strategic paid search and organic search campaigns as well, where we can really drive people to content on the brand side and landing pages that will address those specific audience concerns that we've learned in the data. What we see more of for healthcare and pharma brands leaning into on search is that symptoms phase and becoming that trusted source early on versus going in full force branded terms right off the start. Don't get me wrong, that's a great mix of both approaches, but the most effective way that we see is really listening to that audience first through data, and then taking what they're concerned about and asking already, and really answering that first part of their search and kind of being their partner and getting them on the right path. So we become that trusted partner, as I said before, with them in their journey to find the treatment that best suits them.
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting approach, focusing on that symptom first angle, as opposed to, use the term branded terms, which for anyone listening who might not be familiar, we often look at, maybe industry terms and branded terms being, those that represent your brand, in our case, Lightbox Search, and an industry term for us might be like search results intelligence, something we want to be found for. So I think that's a really great strategy, focusing on those, industry terms as opposed to branded terms. I wanted to also call on John, because John told us a really great story about, how he was able to use local SEO, to help a brand nationally, which I think is really important that everyone here remembers that SEO isn't just for, giant enterprises and big businesses, but, local and smaller businesses as well.
Yeah, and actually it's really relevant, Jesse, because you were talking about how different the SERP is now, right? And being the first organic result on the first page of Google means you're at the bottom of the page, right? There's a lot of real estate that's eaten up, depending on the type of search you're doing, of course, by different elements. And one of those elements is the map pack, right, for localized search. Google Business Profiles, formerly Google My Business. And so, I in my previous life, before I was at Ketchum, I worked for a major automotive manufacturer. We had a serious challenge, right? We were in the throes of COVID. This is time period kind of January to August 2021. Anybody that's on the phone or any of my panelists know, if you were shopping for a car before that, you probably stopped. There's probably not, you probably weren't real eager to go into a car dealership during that time. And that's a major challenge if you're an automotive manufacturer, because your retailers are not moving your product. And so, I was presented with the challenge, John, how do we help? What can we do without spending tens of millions of dollars to be able to help activate, and help get people into the dealerships or interacting with the dealerships in a virtual way? And so, what we were able to do is we were able to lean into some data, some location data, structured data that we had within the organization. It was relatively aged, relatively dirty from a data perspective. But with a little bit of maintenance and some cleanup, we were able to actually provide that to a partner and then to Google to feed that into GMB listings. And so essentially enhancing those listings or maximizing those listings allows for a greater ability or a greater likelihood that you'll appear and be discoverable in the local map pack. And so, it was actually really interesting. We had relatively low expectations. But I think so. Let me check my data real quick so I don't give you the wrong number. But so January to August, we saw 472 million clicks. 8.1 million of those were incremental. Sorry, 24.2 million of those were incremental clicks and generated about 8 million phone calls. And so that's, again, all in addition to what was already happening, because we know that even with a very minimal GMB listing, you're still going to have an opportunity to appear. And what's really interesting about that is that in many searches, especially localized searches like car dealer near me, the map pack will be some of the first organic listings that you'll see. And so you actually accelerate that small business essentially's ability to appear higher in the SERP with very minimal effort from the actual business itself, right? I mean, if you know your name, address, and phone number, if you have some good photos, if you're earning reviews are a huge piece. That can dramatically increase your likelihood to be, discovered and organic.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always a big part of what, our organization preaches is controlling, your digital fortress. And part of doing that is claiming those, low-hanging fruit opportunities like your Google business profile. What about anyone else? What are your kind of key tips, takeaways, advice for anyone looking to, make the most out of search results?
I've got one basically.
Yeah, please.
Sure. I mean, I would say that, I would tell people not to look at the SERP, the search engine result, as just the beginning of understanding what's going on. It's just a snapshot. It's a report card. What's seems to be more valuable from my perspective would be the queries that people are putting in there. So monitoring those, and there's about a half a dozen platforms and tools and things like that you can turn to do that. But understanding the flow of how people are asking those questions, we talked about the vernacular and the vocabulary they're using. I'd say, and especially in B2B, never had a client who wasn't using terminology that the people searching for the same solution were using different terminology. There's always a gap, and especially in the B2B space, because you get proprietary language and they want to, brand their, that's where branding can almost work against you sometimes, because you want to name your solution something special to be able to, differentiate in marketing. But in search, it almost has a negative effect on you sometimes. And then also I think it was mentioned before, but the auto fill on the complete when you're in the search box, that's a whole separate database that is being used there that you can get to questions that people ask most of the time, prepositions that they're making, and comparisons, which is also a big thing people use search for. But I think looking beneath the search results to find those things is going to provide a treasure trove of information for you.
And Jesse, I'll
please
jump in with something that's super simple, which isn't done that often, which is that if you look at any topic, humans always herd. And we can't think of more than 200 to 400 questions about a topic on average that's of substance. So if you know what people are asking, you can then answer those questions. If you then put out the Q&As one at a time or together, you actually impact search, because ultimately people are asking this machine a question. So the Q&As can bring you right back to your content. Super simple to do, but people don't do that because it takes a little bit of work to figure out what those 200 to 400 questions are. The other thing we found is that out of those 200 to 400 questions, if you break it down into queries, maybe 100 queries are driving the majority of your volume. Maybe 150 is a lot. And so if you figure out what those are, then you can figure out exactly what content you should be putting out with which keywords to impact those queries, which will then improve your discovery. Again, very easy to think through. Most firms and clients don't do it.
Awesome advice. Awesome advice. I want to make sure we hear from Kyle and Jennifer before we, end today. Do either of you want to jump in? Kyle?
I've been learning more than I've been teaching on this panel. So thank you for all of your great insights.
Awesome. Jennifer, do you have any?
Yes, they are. They actually are all great insights, and I want to thank you all. But I also want to say that we need to also educate our clients too, about searching and about all this social media, because I think the more we educate the clients, the better off they're going to be, and they're going to be happy with our work.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge key. You know, at Lightbox, part of what we do is try and simplify all of this complex data for the client. You know, we color code everything, summary statistics, because in our experience, typically clients don't care about their search results until there's something wrong with them. You know, they don't look until there's a negative listing, and then they look every single day, and, you know, it's always there. So that's a huge part, is, you know, also we would advise anyone thinking about jumping into managing search results to do so, you know, sooner rather than later.
Just one little quick thing, and just, you know, I've learned so much too as well, because you guys are the experts. But one of the things that I've just gotten from this panel and talking is just the power of search overall, and just how it has the, you know, how it influenced culture, behavior, and society overall. And it really is an amazing thing. We were looking at this overall engine per se, that's really reflecting back on us. And you know what I mean? It really is recording all of this, and it's just amazing to me. So just wanted to say that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your participation today. I think with that, I'm going to say, you know, thank you to everyone who was involved in today's discussion. It's 1:56 now, so we have a couple minutes left. So I wanted to, you know, ask anyone from the audience if there are any remaining questions that they'd like to, you know, have answered by any of our panelists, and remind the audience that if anyone is interested, you know, myself and my team will be staying on, you know, after to give a live demonstration of our software, you know, for those who'd like to see it.
Well, if there's not another audience question, I just want to ask, what's next? What is the next evolution of search, if anyone wants to chime in on that?
I feel like Bob wants to answer that.
I mean, we are looking at search as being like a new intelligence platform. And I go back to, you think of Alexa, that's one example of how we can search. You know, if we think of like search engines out there like Shodan actually is pulling in all smart devices into a search engine. So the ability to gather data has never been better. And we need a little help on technology, like 6G when it comes out, it's so different than 5G, it just blows it away. So that combo is going to completely change what we can search for, I believe. It's not that far away.
One of the things I thought is an interesting use of search is that it's the first best primary data point to use on anything else that you layer on top of it. So when you start to correlate things to search, so in the travel space, you know, we have big travel presence, we started to look at things like, so where are searches for vacation related terms, holiday, whatever, going on things relating to COVID information in a certain area, related to average daily rate of hotel rooms, related to consumer confidence index. And once you start layering all those things together, you can really start to almost predict, you know, where we're able to kind of see that all of a sudden, you know, pets would be important on travel because nobody wants to leave. You can't leave them anywhere. You know, you couldn't take them to a kennel, or solo travel or travel, adventure travel would go up because nobody wants to be in a hotel, you know, so all these different things. I think it become this like bedrock that you can layer more information on top of, which is to me the most interesting thing.
And I'm excited about some of the stuff Google's doing around real world search. Like they've had Google Lens for a few years, but they're pushing into all kinds of like AR and mixed reality search applications that are going to make it really easy to get information about the world around you, the buildings, those shoes, that dish at a restaurant. I'm pretty excited about that. It's going to be cool.
Awesome. I see one of our attendees has raised their hands, Jose. I'm not sure if you wanted to ask a question. If so, please feel free to drop it in the chat or something. But if not, all right. I'm going to say once again, thank you for everyone's participation in today's event. It is 1:59. It was a pleasure to have you all. We've nailed it on the timeline. And at this point, we invite everyone to stay on, you know, for a live demonstration of Lightbox Search for those who are interested. All right.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. So what I am going to do now is I'm going to just go straight, and I invite Larry as well as my colleague here to help me direct this presentation. I was thinking we could just go straight into a live demo.
Yep.
No need for a deck or anything like that. So I'm going to run a search today for my favorite example. I like to use Mr. Elon Musk as an example to show off Lightbox Search and how we can monitor, analyze, and improve search results using the platform. So just to confirm, Larry, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Excellent. So my screen is sharing. So what we have here is a set of search results. I can zoom in a bit here, make it easier to see, for Elon Musk within the Lightbox Search dashboard. I'm going to scroll through the page quickly just so everyone can see, what's on the page before we kind of go through and break down, what's there and why it's there. So when I scroll through, you'll see on the page, organic search results pulled straight from Google, overlaid with data like sentiment, category type, and SEO analysis, domain authority, and more information like that. At the top of search results, we have our search term, our keyword, and a location. So we can run a search from any geographic location that Google is available, and that will give you access to hyper-local content that you might not be able to see or engage with otherwise. So while I'm doing a regional search right now from the United States, we can very easily narrow down and look at, say, New York or California, or even specific, cities and towns. At the top of our search results, we have 5 info boxes. And again, please interrupt if anyone has any questions. I invite you all who are listening to turn on your mics, if I can't hear you or I miss anything. But at the top of our organic search results, we have 5 key info boxes, and those are there every time we run a search. From left to right, we have the Lightbox score, the sentiment distribution, the category distribution, the monthly search volume, and advertising information. The Lightbox score is like a FICO score for your search results. And this is one of those ways that we summarize the information on a page and make it understandable for, say, a client who might be less tech savvy. This score summarizes all of this data on the page and ranges from -100 all the way to +100 and is color coded. So you can quickly understand at a glance when you have, in this case, content that's in that warning area, right? So the search results are, they're not so negative that you couldn't hope to improve them, but they are, not looking great. The sentiment distribution, we use AI to do a first pass to tell you whether or not search results are good, bad, or neutral. We're as accurate as any monitoring software out there like Cision, Mention, Meltwater, but we surpass those services in that we trust the human more than we do the computer. So we actually blend human intelligence with AI and allow our users to override sentiment. So, all these links are live if we're not sure of what the content is, but if we click through, there's a decent amount of controversy in his search results and his Wikipedia page. So if I thought that was a negative result, I could flag it as such and save it. And what that will do is update my, my report, which I can share with a client or a colleague, but it will also save this as the default preference for all future searches, allowing us to save time when we're monitoring for Elon Musk or any other topic, but also ensuring that our exported information is accurate and correct, and as well as, our benchmarked and saved information. Feel free, as I said, always interrupt with questions, but otherwise I'll just kind of roll through quickly. Category distribution is pretty straightforward. We categorize all of the content using a human-built database, so you can understand really quickly at a glance what kind of content is on your page. We go up to 10 pages deep, but this is just a 1-page search result or search results analysis. All of the results are common sense, so you can flag things as like a Wikipedia site, an e-commerce website, a news release, and so on. We can add custom categories for users who don't find our existing categories fit their needs. To the right of category distribution, we have monthly search volume and advertising information. Both of those are localized. So if we were to search for New York or California or something like that, we would see different search volumes and different advertising costs. And those advertising costs reflect Google AdWords. So this will give you localized Google AdWords cost per clicks, as well as the competition rates to help you plan, a paid campaign alongside your organic campaigns. And if I scroll down on this page, you'll also see related search terms. So these are related search terms that happen within the same searching session. So either right before or right after searching for Elon Musk, in the United States, people are searching for Elon Musk Twitter, Elon Musk wife, Elon Musk house, and so on. So we bring those all in, we stack them in order of search volume, give you the cost per click and the competition rates for those as well. I should point out at this stage that every single element of our dashboard can be clicked. You can click on these little download icons. They're on every single result and every single graphic. So you can download them as PNG files and incorporate them into your own PowerPoint presentations or email reports to clients and colleagues. Additionally, this entire page can be exported as a PDF and as an Excel. So you can get that raw data if that's how you'd like to interact with everything. Now that's kind of the summary information that comes on the page, but there's a lot more that goes on underneath the hood. So when we start to look at the content itself, we streamline your ability to understand, how strong is the content on the page? Is it going to be there for a long time? And those kind of things are really crucial, when it comes to things like negative news. So in this case, we have top news stories all getting flagged as negative. And the first thing we can look at is, whether or not they have a strong SEO score and whether or not they have a high ranking domain authority. So domain authority, we stream straight from Moz. So we give that straight to you without any filters or any changes to it. And one of the things we're really proud of at Lightbox is how we've managed to aggregate a lot of the best information that you might need from other platforms, and then kind of cherry pick those facts or data points and brought them into one screen for you. So we save a lot of time and a lot of effort, going out to other services and subscriptions and aggregating that information right into an interactive report, you can share out with anyone you'd like. If we click into the SEO analysis, we'll do a page level breakdown of how optimized this page is for your search term in this location, right? So we can see this link, again, all these links are live. We can click through and engage with the content if we're not sure what it is, but we can see, how well was this page optimized and whether or not it's gaining traction. So we can check on the backlinks to the page. That's another data point we get from a big provider, saving you time and money finding. But we can see that no backlinks have been published to this article, which signals to us that it's unlikely that this is going to stay at the top of search, for a very long time. So that's just a really quick, easy way to determine web page strength. And again, everything is color coded at a glance. We break it down with simple terminology like excellent, no backlinks found, slow, things like that. So you don't have to be a tech expert, to understand the implications of the data on our page. If you do want to improve search results or change search results or influence them in any way, and need help developing a custom strategy, we have a custom action plan generator that's available on all live searches. I say live searches because everything I'm doing right now is like a live search, but we can schedule searches to run automatically and to analyze automatically in the background, even when we're not logged into Lightbox. And that makes it really easy to have all the data you need at your fingertips without ever sitting and waiting for information to crunch. Once this plan is generated, we're going to get a live action plan that helps us address the content on page one. And where we differ from some other services like SEMrush is that we limit the amount of data we give you because we believe there can be data overkill. Larry likes to call other services, fire hoses of information that can feel overwhelming. And I really agree with that. So what we do is we give you up to 5 threats and 5 opportunities that you can address at any given time. So we'll take you through what they are, why they matter, and what you can do about it. So in this case, we have negative news found in position 1 that has a click-through rate of 32%. It's visible on all devices. And then, what do you do about it? Well, maybe you want to issue a news release on a high-ranking newswire service. And what we do is we link you through to Lightbox University, as I call it, and we'll give you information. This is a growing database, growing resource of information that you can rely on as a user that will give you things like, what newswire services rank the highest, and how can I optimize a news release, for search. So that can be really powerful for you when you're developing a digital strategy or trying to quickly put together a proposal or something like that. This, like the rest of our platform, is downloadable in a single click. So you can share this out immediately. And just to give you an idea of what the opportunities look like, we're going to show you content generation opportunities, because maybe these are things you can use to win new business, generate new work with a client, or develop a strategy around. So we might say, look, hey, we didn't find YouTube on page 1. Why does this matter? Well, because it has a really high domain authority. That means it's likely to rank high. And here's where you can learn how to create and optimize YouTube channels. So we link you through to that information. So I'll close that. What I should say is, at this point, if you wanted to monitor search results for Elon Musk or any client or topic, you can set up a recurring search schedule that will run every day, week, or month. You don't have to select an end date, and this will compile the results that you see below here, in real time, according to your chosen schedule. And what's really unique about this is all of this information that we pull, like in the SEO analyses and we show on page, gets cached. And that's really important. We save that information and generate interactive snapshots that you can benchmark the progress of search results and how they change over time, which is really powerful because there's no other system right now that makes it so effortless to measure the impact of new news on page 1 search results in different locations, to compare and contrast search results from before you launched a website with after you've launched a website, and to prove the ROI of your campaigns from a search results perspective without having to rely on statistics like impressions. With Lightbox Search, you can show that, hey, when we first started, top stories with negative news was at the top of page 1, and over time, we were able to optimize your Tesla profile or your SpaceX bio or whatever it is to change the layout of the page. And so you can predict and the impact of those efforts. You can also drag and drop search results in our platform into new orders. And this won't change anything in the real world, but it will allow you to see if whether or not doing any of these things improves your search results, improves your score. We can see if we drag and drop the Wikipedia, let's just say this is still positive, we can see the score jumps up to like a 52. So Lightbox makes it really easy to test hypothetical scenarios, what ifs, and then to generate actual mock-ups of what those outcomes look like. So you can share them with clients or colleagues as proposals, or pitches. You can say, here's what would happen if negative news does climb to position 1, and share that as, a 1-page PDF that's ready to go and outlining, the condition that you're trying to share. Larry, at this point, I feel like I should stop rambling too much and ask, do you think there's anything I'm missing?
Well, the historical data, I think.
That is, yes, great point. So every time you save a search, so I can just show you, what this looks like. You click save, you can leave a title and description. It works a lot kind of like a Dropbox. Mine's a little messy, so I apologize for that. Every time you save a search, we automatically update historical timelines for your search term in that location. So this might be a little hard to see because I have so many data points saved for Elon Musk at this point, but you can see that, over time, his score has fluctuated significantly. All of these charts are interactive, and that's as a result, largely based on the changing sentiment distribution. And so every time you save a search, again, whether it's manually or according to the schedule that you've set, these charts will update. And you don't have to create these charts. The first time you save a search, they'll automatically be generated and then updated moving forward. And so you can also access this from, we have a historical data tab, where you can search for, any of your terms in any of your locations and engage with that content here as well. These other tabs here take you to your saved searches inbox, to your scheduled searches manager, and then to your overrides platform, where you can control and update all of those various settings. Larry, anything else I'm missing?
No, I think that was pretty comprehensive. The action plan is pretty extensive, but as Jesse put it, we tried to keep everything on here digestible, rather than a fire hose that SEM and SEO experts for Coca-Cola or major brands may have an army of staff. So this was really intended for the professional communicator, whether corporate communications people, PR firms, even the large ones, find this a very simple tool that really does touch on the things they daily use. It's kind of like Microsoft. There are probably 80% of it I never used, and I think we all share that. So we're really bringing what we think are the top 20% of what you need to know in actionable manner, understandable manner, and whoever says you can't control Google, you can't, but you sure can impact it.
Absolutely. And that's, yeah, no, that's a really great summation, Larry. I think that's what our tool's intended to do, really take our users all the way from, running a search like they would on Google, recreating that same action, and then integrating into that, approach, this search information in a way they can understand, so they can find issues, address issues, take advantage of opportunities, and build stronger profiles. Okay. So with that,
anyone has a question, I see a couple in chat.
Let's see, am I seeing?
And
Let's see. I get that there are 5 threats and opportunities for the client. How often are they updated? That's a great question. So that action plan generator is only available. So if I go to like a saved search here in my saved searches database, probably got a few too many, I can open up an old one and revisit them. You'll see that this is what an old search looks like. It's still an interactive report. We can still click through to all the links. We can still download, each element individually. We can still open up this SEO analysis. The only difference here on these saved searches is that we don't offer the action plan generator. And the reason that is because, when we run a search live, that's when we actually create that action plan. So just to see how it all comes together, I can run a search for Elon Musk here, and in real time, we'll start pulling in, those search results. We start crunching the score in real time, based on what we find there. And then we can generate a plan. And so you can generate a plan every time you run a search, and it will be dependent on what the results are there. So search results, they change all the time. Google updates its algorithms. At one point, I knew at least 5 to 6 times a day. So anytime there are different results and you generate a plan, that plan will reflect those results. I hope that answers the question. So they're real time as much as they can be. All right. If there are any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, the Q&A, and I'd be more than happy to answer them. I'm also going to re-add to the chat a link to our, a landing page where you can request a demo and get some more information for anyone interested, or schedule a follow-up with us. It has a link to our Calendly on it as well. So, makes it really easy to, get in touch with us. And with that, I think I'm done. I want to say thank you to, everyone who stayed on to watch our demo and to, watch our presentation as well.